Hello, I'm Kate Davis, and this is Humor in the C-Suite, a show about how leaders use humor to create an extraordinary work culture. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Humor in the C-Suite. My guest this week is Fotini Iconomopoulos, and after working in over 170 industries for over a decade, Fotini has been the person that companies like Ford, Microsoft, MIT, Nestle, Purina, Rolls-Royce, and Walmart call to help to get them through their high-stakes negotiations or upgrade their negotiation, communication, and persuasion skills. HarperCollins noticed her frequent media appearances in outlets including Forbes, CBC, and Harvard Business Review, and asked her to write her first book, which is now a best-selling book called Say Less, Get More, The Unconventional Negotiation Techniques to Get You What You Want. In addition to teaching MBA negotiations in Toronto, Fotini offers her experience to nonprofit initiatives. Among her accomplishments, she has been recognized with numerous awards, including the RBC Women Entrepreneur Awards and Top 40 Under the Age of 40 Awards. I am so excited. You guys are going to love this episode. We talked about how Fotini uses her negotiation skills, but also humor within that realm. We had such a great conversation, so many incredible insights. You guys are really going to get a lot out of this episode. I can't wait for you to listen to it, so please enjoy.
I think that my brain doesn't recognize a joke because I don't intentionally tell jokes.
Right.
Like you can tell me I'm funny on stage, but I don't intentionally tell a joke.
Yeah, I've seen you. You're just so charming and perfect. It's but your stories really resonate, and you just come at it from such a personal perspective, which I loved. All right, Fotini, welcome to Humor in the C-Suite. I'm so thrilled to have you as a guest. I've never had a negotiator on my podcast before.
Well, I'm even more thrilled to fill that void for you.
See? We've had economists, we've had astronomers, we've had futurists, we've had a lot, but you're our first negotiator. And I love your background, where you come from. So I thought we would just start there. And I know it's cliche, a lot of podcasts, but no one's going to explain what you do like you. So I thought I would just start off there, and then we'll get to the questions.
Cool. Well, I'm basically the person that people hire when they say, Walmart is breathing down our neck. What do we do? What do we say? So I get involved, or at least my legacy is I've gotten involved in those types of negotiations on a consulting capacity, or a group will say, hey, our team is bleeding profit. Can you train them to be more effective at this kind of stuff? Or we're having a lot of conflict, or the client is not, responding to us the way that we want to. How do we train our team to have better communication skills and give them some type of training? But these days, most of my time is spent on large stages helping people see that they actually negotiate every single day. So how can we make those connections we have with people, those conflicts that can come up, how do we turn them into connection? How do we approach how do you get what you want without making it feel like a boxing match and everybody walks away a lot more satisfied?
I love that, because to me, that relates so much to humor.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Because it really does lower people's defenses when those conflicts arise, when, it's a great tension breaker and all those things. So I know you come from a long background in retail and stuff like that. And just like, your amazing book, Say Less and Get More, and it's unconventional negotiation techniques to get what you want. And yes. I love that. I wanted to say it all because it's important. But you got that book deal from people seeing you on air and through your television appearances, which I found it's like the universe was saying, we need to hear this now. Right. And how have you used humor in situations when you have been negotiating?
Until recently, I didn't realize that I was doing it. And so I come from a background that is unlike a lot of the people in my field, right? So one of the reasons HarperCollins reached out to me was because I said, why another negotiation book? I'm flattered, but why this one? And they said, we think you have a voice that people need to hear. What we both recognize consciously and subconsciously is a lot of the stuff that's out there, a lot of the language, a lot of the techniques come from people who don't look or sound like me. And some of it is really great advice, and some of it just doesn't work coming out of my mouth. I know that people treat me differently because of the way I look and sound. And especially when I was first starting out, not only was there, all the isms, but there was also an ageism thing. They're like,
Right.
you're going to teach me. So there was like a hostility towards someone who looked and sounded like me. And in hindsight, I recognize I did use some humor right from the very first second that I met people to disarm them a little bit, to break the ice a little bit. Like we were even joking before you hit record about my name. Like I introduced
Yeah.
myself as, oh, it's Fotini. It's easy to remember because it sounds like a pasta and that lightens the mood. Or, when people ask, how do you say my last name? And I'm like, just look for the mop in the middle. And it all sort of comes together. Iconomopoulos. Those little things disarm people without me going into teacher corrector mode or austere mode or any of those
Yeah.
things. It makes me a little bit more approachable, and it's light, it's funny, and it makes people go, okay, I want to find a way to work with this person. I'm attracted to this aura that we have between us, this vibe between us, and I want more of that.
Yeah, it's so important because you did start off very young and in a very male dominated field. Do you feel like a lot of real life has translated into you bringing that levity into your I guess I want to say your work or your experience through that work?
Yeah, I mean, what most people misconstrue about negotiations, and this is even on the back cover of the book. One of the slogans we use is from boardroom to bedroom, and
Oh,
it's
so
because what some of the things that we talk about, and I use a
yeah.
lot of children's analogies all the time because
Yeah.
most people assume, oh, I don't work in boardrooms, I don't negotiate, and it's like actually you do it all the time. You're negotiating with those little monsters we call
Yeah.
children. You're negotiating
Yeah.
with your dog to get them to follow a path or poop or whatever they're going to
Yeah.
do. You're negotiating
Absolutely.
for space on public transit when you're physically taking up space and trying to get people from knocking into you. So
Yeah.
those little things that we do on a daily basis, I bring those into boardrooms, offices, and things like that as well. Because if they work in those environments, they're going to work in the boardroom too. So those everyday moments will also translate into the moments that we face at work on a regular basis.
Because it's human nature.
Yeah.
I
And
Yeah.
that's actually one of the things that has come to light in recent years for me. It's what's different about me in terms of my thought leadership on negotiation is I like to think of myself as someone who brings a humanity to negotiation. I can't teach you robotic ways, black and white ways of negotiating. I can teach you, however, the mentality and the lens of I'm dealing with a human. So, how do I get this other human to want to work with me as a human? And when we think about that, that is what helps us elevate our game because you're not treating someone like a statistic. You're not treating them like someone on a clipboard or an Excel spreadsheet and so on. We're not logical people. We're not logical things. Like that's why AI has not really figured out negotiation because what we
Yeah.
do and how we make decisions is not logical at the moment. And so you can't just do negotiations on a spreadsheet. You're dealing with another person. You're dealing with another human. So how do you bring that humanity to get over conflict?
Really, that is so great because you're really going from transactional to human at that point.
Yeah.
What is okay, this is a weird question, but I really want to put it out there. What does humor mean to you?
What does humor mean to me? I
Yeah.
mean, it definitely doesn't mean being a comedian. That's not what humor
No.
means to me. I mean, I love
Yeah.
that you are a comedian, and I think you're hilarious. But that's not my expectation of people
Yeah.
with a sense of humor. Humor is the ability to enjoy, to find joy in moments, and I think if you
Yeah.
can do that, it just brings so much energy to a situation that would otherwise be austere, severe, condescending, any of those things.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think for me, humor is finding moments of joy. You could be delivering them, you could also be receiving them and seeing them and manifesting them at the same time.
Ah, look at you go. I love it. Have you when you're dealing with teams and you go into these workplaces where you're speaking or you're training, do you find like different groups like I'm sure you can read the groups when you come in, whether they're happy, whether they're miserable, what's going on in the workplace. Yeah, absolutely.
When
Do
they've
you
been
find
forced to be there versus volunteering.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Do you find that humor is great with team building when you're doing it? When
A
you're,
100%.
yeah,
And again, you don't have to be a comedian, but I mean,
yeah,
I go through really long stretches of let's call it lecturing for lack of a better term, downloading
Yeah.
information to people.
Yeah.
They are not going to want to listen to me if there's not a
Right.
dose of humor in there. And again, it doesn't mean like massive jokes and things like that coming up. It just means, is there a moment of levity instead of this sustained, serious learning? Is there a moment, a blip? A moment to
Yeah.
break up the monotony? Is there an opportunity for them to have a release of some kind to then want to come back in again? It's these moments of recovery. We learned a lot during the pandemic about how people learn. And one of those things is they need moments of recovery. You can't just do this sustained download for a long time.
Yeah.
You can't do this sustained staring at the camera for a really long time. So I need to find those blips of, even if it's a few seconds of recovery between the long breaks that we give people and so on.
Yeah.
That for me is the purpose of humor in what I do.
I love that. And no one has said that on this podcast so far. With all my guests, like no one has called it a recovery. And I really do believe that. Like it really does, release tension, stress, anxiety, all those things, helps us refocus and regroup. It's a breath of fresh air, really.
I mean, I kind of see it as like if you think of a visual,
Yeah.
if you can imagine a balloon that's blowing up, because you're getting
Yes.
so much tension is getting on the walls of that balloon. You're filling it with so much information, emotion, whatever those things are. It's almost like the humor is a little bit of release. You're letting a little air out.
Yeah.
And you're allowing it to build a little more. You got to let a little more air out to build a little bit more. Like it's that back and forth, that sustainability, so that the walls of the balloon don't pop.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing I found really interesting is because I always think of you as going in when people are fighting or arguing or, things aren't going well. But I love the fact like we're negotiating our space on a subway. We're negotiating, like there's always negotiation going on,
Well, people
especially.
joke with me. They're like,
Yes.
they say to me, your life must be so exciting. It must be like that show Suits. And I'm like, actually, it's nowhere near that. People pay me a lot of money to make sure it doesn't get to that point. And so that's the whole thing. When you're on the subway, you're not trying to get into an arm wrestling match or a punching match with the person next to you. You're trying to establish some boundaries so that they don't try to push those boundaries, so you don't end up in conflict. So there's a lot of conflict prevention in the work that I do, both, in the real world with clients, in the teaching world, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you can think of negotiation as conflict prevention, it's much easier to be people's smoke detector than it is to be their firefighter. That's a lot more damage to have to fix later.
Oh, good one. I like that one too. Just
I think
full of them. Fotini's rocking this. Okay, when you're in a situation where you go into a group, do you find, because like when you're doing your training or whatever, do you find that humor will help that team building within that group? And is it hard because everyone negotiates a little differently? Like humor is different, obviously. Like do you have to read the room like I have to read the room in terms of humor and in terms of negotiation?
Yeah, I really do think, in any interaction, you have to read the room, right? So even if I pull in a negotiation analogy, one of the things that we're usually all familiar with is the concept of opening extreme. So when you're going into a negotiation, in a monetary negotiation, you don't open with where you expect to finish. If you want to get that, hat on the beach in Mexico for $10, you don't start at $10, you start at $5, right? So that you go back and forth and you finish at that $10 mark. Now, that same negotiation may look really different when you're in China or Thailand or Canada or the US. That $5 might be insulting to someone in Canada, but it's not so insulting on the beach in Mexico, or it's not so insulting in the market in Marrakesh or something like that. So that's reading the room too, is going, how extreme is extreme? And when it comes to humor too, what is funny in this moment to the person sitting across from me? Like I work in the oil and gas industry. I've worked in over 170 industries. I still remember in my earliest days of consulting and training, I had to work with an oil and gas group while CNN was running the news on a massive, global headlining explosion in the oil and gas industry on an oil rig. That is not the moment to make fun of anything in that category, to make a joke about that kind of thing. That's part of reading the room too. Where is it cool to do something self-deprecating or something funny in that sense? Where is it cool to, tease others in a joyful way, not in a condescending way? Who's open to the gentle roast in the room? Are they sitting at the front of the room or the back of the room? Do they have a mask massive ego or a little ego, all of those things matter. I'm sure you know when you're telling a
Yeah.
joke, when you're finding these little bits of humor, even if it's not in joke telling, it's if laughing at something they say.
Yeah.
Did they mean for it to be funny? Will they find it funny if you laugh, or will they be insulted if you laugh? Those little things make a world of difference in reading the room when I'm trying to get sustained attention.
Yes, I love that. And do you find when you are within those rooms, within those industries, have you found you going in as a woman who's negotiating way different?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most colorful stories I have are usually from those male dominated oil and gas kind of industries where they've never worked with someone who looks and sounds like me before. My
Right.
predecessors all looked really different. So their brain is not accustomed to seeing me. Their brain is used to something else. It's beyond expectation. And
Yeah.
so if their expectations are so out of whack, what do I need to do to bring their expectations back to reality to make them more receptive to me? And humor is one of those really easy tools to change people's
Yeah.
expectations, to make them go, oh, this isn't going to be torturous. This person who's so unknown to me or so foreign to me, it's actually
Yeah.
going to be more enjoyable because there's something that I can latch onto here.
You ever had like in a situation where you've tried humor and it's actually failed, and how have you recovered from that?
I can't recall any. It might just be that my
Okay.
brain has blacked them out.
No.
But I don't take a lot of risks either because that's part of my universe. So reading
Yeah.
that room is really important. I'm not a comedian who needs to be edgy. I don't
Yeah.
need to push the envelope or
Yeah.
things like that. So I don't need to do it. Therefore, I'm not going to push that hard. But I can even think about even in my own family. My mother wrote me a birthday card one year. It was like within the last decade, where it
Yeah.
was like to my serious daughter, because my sister was always the funny one and I
Yeah.
was always a serious one. But it's because I was taking on the responsibilities. Like I was
Right.
taking on the problems. I'm the problem solver. That's my role. So I went straight into
Yeah.
that. That comment, the serious daughter, it was
Yeah.
not meant to be an insult, but
No.
it really affected me. It would open up my eyes to I'm always going into serious mode with my parents. I'm so good at reading the
Yeah.
room, breaking the ice, consciously doing some of these things to make my life easier in the business world, but I'm
Right.
not necessarily doing it at home. So that comment made me adjust how I interact at home to bring some of that in. And it's still authentic, but it's very easy to go into autopilot mode and go, okay, what do we need to do to fix this problem?
Yeah.
Whereas I need to pause for a moment. I need to say less for a moment in my own language to bring some of that moment of
There's a
sustainability.
book about that, by the way. No.
It's pretty good.
That's so funny because we really are different people. Like I'm way different at home than I am, if I'm at an event or, I'm always, as a comic, I'm always censoring, but I do find, and I don't know if you find this in your world of negotiation, do you find when you're dealing with different cultures, you're reacting differently or having to explain things differently?
I mean, rarely in terms of the word different. It's the same
Okay.
principles I'm using, but it's because I've read the room. So instead of
Right.
starting at the $5, I might start at $7. So the
Right.
principle is the same. I'm still going to open extreme, right?
Yeah.
But in that sense, you're always adapting. But I wouldn't say I do anything completely different in one culture to the next. And even, I was thinking about that as the book was coming out. I was like, would this book be as useful over in Asia as it is in North America? And the truth is,
Right.
yes, because the principles are the same. The principle is think about who you're dealing with. With
Yeah.
whom am I speaking to right now? What is their personal experience? What is their cultural experience? And so on. So when you take that into account, I can use the same strategies, but the extremes of them might look a little bit different.
Oh my gosh. What corporation or what industry do you find when you've gone into them? Is there any one industry that stands out where you're like, "Oh, they have a great sense of humor. I get it."
Oh, that's an interesting question. What's funny? This is going to sound a bit bizarre,
Yeah.
but some of my favorite audiences are women's groups.
Oh,
and
I
it
love
and
yeah.
it's usually those women who are in male dominated spaces, so whether it's a legal women's group, whether it's a women's association of some kind in whatever their industry is, I
Yeah.
walk off the stage and I feel like I should be a comedian. They laugh at everything I say. They're so receptive. They're just
Yeah.
warmer to start with, and I think it's
Yeah.
because when they see me, they have their defenses come down a little bit. They go, oh, she looks and sounds like me. And so they're more open to what I have to say. So when their guard comes down, just because they're not defensive about, well, he's going to tell me something that doesn't apply to my world. When we
Right.
find similarities with people, our defenses come down, and it allows us to be more open to that humor and so on. So I find for me, those audiences are the most receptive to me. I think we have the most fun together because they're the most open to it. And so I audio, like the audible of the laughter is so much louder and roarous in those rooms.
Yeah.
The feedback is so different. It's not bad or good. It's just different when I'm in front of those types of audiences, when they can feel safe, when they can feel like they have this safe environment, when they don't feel defensive, they're just far more receptive to everything I have to say, including my jokes.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I do find, because I've actually gone and seen you speak, and it was for a women's group at Bell, if you remember.
Yeah, I do.
But they really were like, they were just eating up everything you were saying. And it was interesting to me to see, because we are friends. I know you in this sort of one-on-one, but I've never seen you in a group setting. So it's interesting to me that you put yourself out there like that, because humor is, it can be a risk, or it can be, but to me, it's worth the risk to have everyone coming into the same moment, sharing in that moment and laughing, and it really does bring people together. Hi, it's Kate. I can't believe you made it halfway through the show. Look, if you or anyone you know would like to be a guest on Humor in the C-Suite, I would love to have you. So email me, kate@katedavis.ca. In those rooms, teaching people how to negotiate, or really, do you find that listening is a huge part of that?
Absolutely. I mean, listening for me is the most important skill that you can have in any interaction with the other party, whether it's me presenting, whether it's me getting people to give me a proposal, whether in the negotiation space, in the teaching space, and whatever space that I'm in. Listening is imperative to success, because if people don't sense that you're listening, that you're paying attention to them, they don't want to engage.
Right.
If you're not, even you as a comedian, if you're on stage and you're telling a joke to people, if you haven't listened to, where is my audience coming from? What's the demographic like? And when I say listening, it's also visual listening, because people are telling you a story just by the way they show up, in the looks on their faces, and the clothes that they're wearing, and in all of that, the way they're expressing themselves. It doesn't have to be verbal. If you are paying attention to those clues, they will be so much more receptive when you communicate, when you're demonstrating that you're listening. And so it's a massively important skill to get that trust, even if it's temporary trust, even if it's just for a few seconds to have their attention, whether it's going to be ongoing because we're going to have to work together for the next few months and so on. But without that trust, people don't want to engage with you. They're looking for a way out instead of a way in.
Wow. Okay. I find comedy such a listening sport. Like, if you don't hear this setup, you're not going to get the punchline. I fought, if I have someone really hammered in an audience, drunk, all of a sudden, nothing's making sense and they're interrupting it for everyone.
Yeah.
And I've had nights like that. And I do find people who don't listen, really, even in like the boardroom or whatever, it's the same thing. It separates us. And and when we really do listen, we both know that then we can put ourselves in their shoes and have empathy and all those things that real listening leads to. But for me, for myself, like, I come from generations of shitty listeners. Like, oh my God, no one listens. It's like in one ear out the other. I'll tell my mom something and she'll be like, I was like, I just said that. Like, why were you listening to me? So for me, it's like being a real skill I've really had to work on, and really, and when I say listening, I'm really, had to like stop myself from thinking of the answer I want to give so I can listen. Like all those weird things. You're like, oh, this is a thing I have to learn. I just can't believe it's not, natural. My husband's always like, you're interrupting me. And I'm like, I'm just not listening to you.
Well, I actually come from a long line of interrupters.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I had a coach once say to me, they had me do a little exercise and they said, tell us your name, your phone number, your address. And so I said, my name is Fotini Iconomopoulos. I live at such and such and such. My phone number is this. And then I'm completed and my sentence goes down. They're like, why is your tone going up at the end of every piece of your communication? I said, because if I signal that I'm done by going down, I'm going to get interrupted. So in my mind, if my inflection goes up, they're going to assume I'm not finished yet, and they're going to let me continue because I'm so conditioned to be interrupted. What I didn't recognize is for everybody else, when I do this thing where my inflection goes up, I sound like a high school cheerleader, and maybe I'm unsure of myself and I'm doubtful. So I needed to change my inflection to go down instead of up, so I sounded more credible. And what I found is when I am more credible, people are less likely to interrupt. They're going to listen more because your credibility's gone up a notch, and they're going, I want to hear what this person has to say. But it takes a lot of effort on my end to unlearn the habit of interrupting. Like I'm sure I've done it too already on this podcast, but part of my brain goes, let her finish. Let her finish. You want to hear what she has to say. Maybe she's going to ask you a different question. You think you know the question that's coming, but maybe she's got a different one for you, and it's going to be an even better conversation.
That is, it's to me, it is the key to everything. It really is, because so many times everything is about really that connection, and without listening, we don't have it, but I as well, like, just really, it's something I've had to learn as well. So it's been a long time, like even on calls with clients, I'm like, just listen, just listen, just listen, just listen. I'm reminding myself that's my job here, to really hear them out. So, and for me, comedy and humor is all about that. Not only reading the room and listening, but also understanding that you can pull out those, that bit of levity, that we're looking for in those moments, and that it's okay to go there because we are listening to what's happening with the person. So there's huge power in that. But there's also, a lot of power in knowing when you can't use humor. And like you said, and I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the many reasons why we titled the book "Say Less, Get More." It's because it's those say less moments where, number one, you're not giving away information, because information is power. So you don't want to be the one giving away information constantly. But if you're constantly talking, how are you going to get information from the other party? You need to say less to give them the space to fuel you with the power that you need so that you can get more out of this conversation. And so whether you're a comedian, whether you're a leader and so on, if you're not a great leader, if you're not listening to what your people want, why should they want to follow your direction, your proposals, and so on? Why should they care? Why should they be engaged? If they go, but that's not what I want. That's not the type of culture I want to work in. That's not the type of working conditions I want to be in. You're turning them off because you haven't paid attention. You cannot pay attention without taking a moment to say less and listening to what they have to say, or listening to their reactions to things, listening to the look on their faces or the absence of those nods and so on. Those are the things that we need in order to get the feedback, to do the right thing, and to get more out of those interactions.
Yeah, it's so true. Okay, so if you had any advice in terms of using humor to leaders, that, if you're going in, and do you have any advice for those leaders and how they can use humor within negotiations?
It's thinking about those tense moments. So if you can anticipate that there's going to be tension, and anytime there is a negotiation, there's going to be tension. People are uneasy with the stress that comes from negotiation. If things aren't going smoothly, we go into fight or flight mode. And the whole purpose of a negotiation means when things aren't going smoothly, we need to adjust something. And so if people are in that fight or flight mode where their brain is on overdrive, what can you do to get them out of that fight or flight mode so that people are much more logical and calmer and more receptive to what you have to say? Well, humor is one of those things. And again, I want people to understand, you don't have to be a comedian. You don't have to be as talented as you are. You're super sharp. You're super witty. You don't have to do that. You can make something, a self-deprecating comment. You can laugh about how you brought the wrong shoes for the weather. It's those types of things. I do caution, however, if you belong to a non-dominant group,
Yeah.
If you are the less dominant party in this group that you're in, the way I was in the oil and gas world, I caution people in that weaker group, if you will, of making too much self-deprecation. Because if
Yeah.
they sense that you're weak and you're telling them I'm weaker in the form of that self-deprecation, self-deprecating humor can have a really useful place in making people feel more at ease with you, to make the,
Yep.
if the power dynamics are out of whack, you can say, hey, I'm
Yes.
just like you, with some self-deprecation. But if you're
That's right.
coming from a lower power dynamic, then it
Yeah.
actually makes self-interested people more aggressive. So we want to be conscious of the type of humor that we use there. So make it about, the silly shoes that you brought versus I'm not as smart as you folks are. I'm not a rocket scientist like you. Ha ha ha. I
Yeah.
would caution people who already are perceived as weaker to not push themselves into a more weak category.
Wow. D- uh, In terms of negotiation, I have so many questions now just with everything you're saying. I'm like, when you were studying negotiation, was it all about human behavior? Like, is it
Yeah.
so much about that?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of it accidentally, but I went to school and I studied everything. So I studied
Yeah.
arts and science and French, and then I ended up doing my MBA immediately. And I just thought, okay, I can learn finance from a book. I've done that before. I can learn a
Yeah.
lot of stuff from textbooks. I'm great at, regurgitating that stuff. But what I found the most interesting was people. And so I ended up picking up a major in organizational behavior, and that's just the psychology of people at work.
Right.
And so people, I always figured, was going to be the common thread, whether I ended up in a job at a bank or a job at a consulting firm or, working at L'Oreal that I ended up doing, I was going to
Yeah.
have to interact with people. And so that was the common thread, no matter where I was going to be. And so that element of understanding, how do people think? How do they make decisions? What's influencing
Mhm.
their brain? That for me was
Yeah.
always the most fascinating thing. And so when it comes to
Yeah.
negotiations, it's not about, okay, who should go first and so on. That's part of it, but it's understanding what's going on with them there right now that's going to make them more or less receptive to what I have to offer. How do I get them to want to continue to have a conversation with me? And what would I be doing that might turn them off of continuing this conversation?
Wow. Yes. Because it's really about pulling people in,
Yeah.
and getting them to be themselves with that. Is okay. So a couple more things and then I'll let you go. But I'm really enjoying this. What benefits have you personally experienced by using humor in your life?
I think you just attract a better vibe and better people. Like
Yeah.
if I'm laughing, I'm having a better time. My stress levels are coming down, my cortisol's coming down, and so on.
Yeah.
So if I'm laughing with someone and they're laughing with me, it's just a better frequency that we both operate on. So
Right.
I have less stress. When I'm looking forward to being in a room with people who can find those little moments of joy, that makes life, I'm smiling before I even get in the room. That means my
Right.
cortisol is better managed and I need less yoga and less of those other things to manage the stress in my life.
Yeah.
It just makes it so much. I leap out of bed when I go to see my clients because I enjoy their company. I'm at a point in my
Yeah.
career where I'm very fortunate. I can pick and choose who I want to say yes and no to. So
Yeah.
when I know I'm going to a women's conference, I'm like, bring it. I want to hang out
Yeah.
all day.
Yes.
That ability to psych your brain up means you're reducing stress in so many ways.
Yeah.
So I think that for me has been the biggest gift of understanding how humor can play a role in things. Like when I know
Yeah.
these women are going to laugh at my jokes, when they're going to tell me something funny, when there's going to be more frequency of moments of levity, that just
Yeah.
makes me look forward to being there, and it just makes life so much more fun.
It's so much fun for me to watch, performers or speakers on stage at events and have their jokes hit and watch
Yeah.
they just glow like little kids. They're like, oh, it worked. Right. And I'm always so thrilled when that happens, like just watching that moment. And that's every speaker. Like
Yeah.
every speaker, no, if the joke works, they're just so, because it really is that moment of everyone being in that moment together and
Yeah.
really, and you negotiating that for yourself on stage, if I can use that word, and really putting yourself out there at that point. I love. So we always end Humor in the C-Suite by asking my guests if they'd like to share something that funny that's happened to them in the past. Is there anything you want to share? I
What?
know.
I know funny things happen to me all the time. I think I just dismiss them. Like I don't even factor them in
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Fair enough.
for me, the funniest things that happen is when I meet people out in the wild. Like for me, it's those
Yes.
coincidences that I find so funny. So I think one of the funniest moments in my life, and I don't know that other people would categorize this as funny, is
Yeah.
I was on the other side of the world. I was in Australia for the first time. And my mother was actually born in Australia. So
Oh,
I was really curious to be there. I was really excited to be there. And I was looking for a gift for her at a market in Sydney. And I was looking at this necklace and I saw the woman's card on the table, the vendor on the table. And she said, "Oh, you're Greek." And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm Greek too." She goes, "What part of Greece are you from?" And I just happened to pick my mom's side of the family. Since I was in Australia, my brain went to because my parents are from different parts of Greece.
yeah.
I was like, "Well, I'm from my mom's from this village called Molai." She's like, "Oh, I'm from close to there, but I'm from an even tinier village." I go, "My mom's from the same tinier village, but it's literally the size of my condo. Like, who else would know this tiny little village in Greece?" And she was like, "You're from that village?" And we just had like, we burst out laughing, and it was like the craziest
Yeah.
coincidence in the world. And then I called my grandmother from Australia over Skype. This is how far back it goes.
Yeah.
And I said, "I just met this person and here's their last name. I'm sure we're related because there's no way someone in that village is not related to us somehow."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Of course you did." Like it was just her reaction was the funniest thing because these things just
Yeah.
happen to you. Like it's not like a burst your belly laughing kind of moment,
No,
but it's
but it's
those
so
things
serendipitous.
it's those things that bring levity that just make
Yeah.
me smile and even make me chuckle at
Like
these
who
things.
would have thought?
Like, how did I end up on the other side of the world finding a long lost relative
Relative
while
in
I'm
a
shopping for a
market.
gift for my mother? Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. I love that so much. And again, bringing people together. It's your
Yeah.
gift. I'm telling you. I
Thank
love it. I honestly, I can't wait for people to hear this episode. You are amazing. Your energy is amazing. Everything you do and I hope everyone checks you out after this podcast and really goes to your website. We'll have it all up there and I'll have all the, all your Instas and all that, your LinkedIn links and LinkedIn links. Is that a thing? I don't even know.
And I
Just,
have a gift for your listeners too.
oh,
If they go
yes.
to my website,
Yeah.
fotiniicon.com/quiz, there's a personality quiz there, a free quiz where you can learn a little bit more about what are your natural tendencies, what are your autopilot mode, and what are some of the pros and what are some of the watch outs for that. So they can go there and find a little bit more self-awareness about how they handle some of those moments.
Oh, I love that. I hate conflict. Ah, it's the worst.
The majority of the people that I interact
I'm
with
like
do.
a
And that's why I keep
turtle.
getting brought in. But what if we could find humor and connection in
Yeah.
conflict instead of making it feel like that battlefield? Now all of a sudden
Yes.
it's not conflict anymore. It's an opportunity for connection. That's the
Yeah.
attitude I want people to have when it comes to negotiation instead of that wanting to hide from the world kind of stuff.
Yeah, turtle. Oh my God. An attitude for connection. You heard it here, guys. Heard it here. Thank you so much. You're the best.
Thanks for having me.
You're perfect. You know that.
Stop.